Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC 302, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world. You got the very dominant Islam Makhachev, the protege of Khabib, taking on the top knockout artist in the history of the lightweight division. I mean, he's got the most knockouts in lightweight history, and if you include his featherweight run as well, some of the most knockouts in the history of the sport. So unbelievable main event, stacked card. So without further ado,
let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
Main event of the evening for the lightweight belt. We got the champ, Islam Makhachev. He's 25-1, taking on Dustin the Diamond Poirier, who's 30-8. And currently they got it Islam minus 700. The comeback on Dustin Poirier is plus 475. So right off the bat, odds like that, it's a dog or pass situation. I mean, listen, Islam's an amazing champion, and he's a guy who, paid his dues even prior to winning the belt, went on an insane win streak. And people like to talk about, oh, he's only fighting featherweights. And like, dude, this guy beat Arman Sarukian and like has beat some very Charles Oliveira. So let's not let's not start that stupid narrative. Just like let's not start the whole, oh, Dustin Poirier doesn't fight grapplers. He avoids grapplers. Oh, really? Khabib Nurmagomedov's not a grappler. Charles Oliveira's not a grappler. Michael Chandler's not a former D1 wrestler. Benoit Saint-Denis isn't a grappler. Islam Makhachev isn't a grappler. So to say Dustin Poirier ducks grapplers is just categorically false and just super ignorant. Now, does he beat every grappler he faces? No. But to say he doesn't fight grapplers is it's just stupid. And it's just wrong. And that's just the bottom line. So, there's the whole, oh, Islam only defends his belts against featherweights, which Volk is like one of the GOAT featherweights, and they had an incredible fight which warranted a rematch. And it's not Islam's fault that Charles pulled out of the rematch, and that Volk is such a badass that he stepped up on like a week short notice for that rematch. So people give Islam shit for that, and people give Dustin shit for not fighting grapplers when I just named you like the best of the best that he's fought who are grapplers. So y'all got to stop these ridiculous narratives that are just not true because you like or don't like someone. Like, what's not to like about Islam and Dustin? I mean, Islam, such a respectable champion, an honorable guy, fights to his strengths, but he's been getting better in all areas. I mean, we know about his insanely dominant grappling ability, but I mean, he just went out there and knocked out Volk in the first round too. So don't sleep on his stand-up. And even in the other fight where Volk had the full training camp, he was rocking Volk in that fight too. And Dustin, I mean, I already mentioned how he's got the most knockouts in the history of the lightweight division. But, for a guy who I think this might be his last fight, and it's just, an honor to have watched this man's career from when he made his UFC debut against Josh Crispy. Josh Crispy was originally supposed to fight Jose Aldo for the belt. Aldo pulled out because, Crispy was on this massive run in the WEC. They used to call him the Fluke. He went 4-0 in the WC with like destructive finishes against even guys like Mark Hominick. He gets his title shot. Jose pulls out the fight. So they do Dustin Poirier in Dustin's debut against Josh Crispy, and Dustin beat the shit out of him in a way where we were like, okay, who's this guy? And that's after his fight with Zach Mickelwright in WEC, which if you want to see a quick little 1-minute stoppage or a little 1-minute destruction, go pull that fight up. So it's just cool seeing, Dustin get this final chance. And look, obviously the odds indicate that Islam's just going to go over there and smash, and maybe that's the case. But, I was in attendance at UFC 199 when Michael Bisping fought Luke Rockhold the second time, and, Bisping was around the same odds here, maybe even a bigger underdog, and, no one gave him a chance, a snowflake's chance in hell, and he went out there and upset the, Rockhold, who had already finished him once and who was looking like he was, headed. I mean, he was already the champ, but he looked like he was headed towards a long title reign. So, sometimes the stars align for these legends. And if it's truly destiny, it'd be incredible to watch Dustin Poirier go out with the belt. Do I predict it to happen, though? I mean, if you're just looking at the X's and O's and the stylistics, this is a very tough matchup for Dustin. It's not that Dustin can't grapple. Of course Dustin can grapple. Dustin's a black belt. It's more so that Dagestani style of grappling is just so hard to deal with. These guys wear you down, and you finally work your way back up to the feet. They're back on your legs again, and they don't mind striking with you either. That's where things could get interesting, because we can mention the one time that Islam lost to Adriano Martin, which ironically enough is also a southpaw just like Poirier, and got him with a check right hook, which is like one of Poirier's big money punches, the same shot he just knocked out Benoit Saint-Denis with, and that he's knocked out tons of people throughout his career with. So yeah, I mean, it's easy to just sit here with a -700 favorite and just, go ahead and pick Islam. And sure, as a pure pick, I will pick Islam, but I'm rooting for Poirier here. And I want to be very clear about why. It's nothing against Islam. I think Islam's a great champ. And like I said, all the people talking shit about him, oh, he only fights featherweights. Like, guys, it's not his fault Du Bronx pulled out. And again, this is a man who beat Arman Sarukian. Debut or not, Arman's a beast. So I'm not going to be the guy to ever discredit Islam Makhachev, bro. Like, he's the champ, and a lot of people consider him to be pound for pound number one. The reason why I want to see Dustin win this fight, again, nothing against Islam. I think he's fantastic. It's more so, when you get these violence gods like Dustin Poirier, I mean, how cool would it be to see the guy who holds the record for most knockouts in that division get a knockout here and sail into the sunset? I mean, this guy's, not only has he delivered some of the most exciting fights and knockouts in the history of the sport, he's a great ambassador. People start with their fake nice guy bullshit, but that's because they don't have a competitive bone in their body. Like, let's talk about the Dan Hooker fight. Like, Dan Hooker was talking all kinds of insane shit, saying like, Dustin Poirier, I'm gonna end you, and like all this shit. Like, and then they get into a fight. Dustin beats his ass, and then afterwards, Dustin walks up to him. He's like, hey, don't count your chickens, Dan. You know what I'm saying? Don't count them before they hatch. And everyone's like, oh, Dustin's classless. He's a fake nice guy. It's like, dude, have you ever played a sport before in your life? Like, stop being so fucking soft. Like, these guys are fighters trying to beat the shit out of each other, trying to take away half each other's paycheck. Like, stop. You know what I mean? Like, you know what they're getting into. But I've met Dustin many times. Follows me on Twitter too, which is cool. But I've met him many times, and he's such a cool guy. So yeah, the fake nice guy bullshit, like, reserve that for someone who's actually fake. I don't think there's anything fake about Dustin, and there's nothing fake about Islam too, man. These are two real guys. Look, Islam's probably going to get it done, but what are you supposed to do with -700? I'm good on that. So it's either dog or pass. And I'm going to root for Poirier to have his Michael Bisping moment. That's all he's missing, is that undisputed belt. He got to touch the interim belt in this fight that's behind me in this poster here with Max Holloway. Incredible fight. So, yeah, let's see how it plays out. It'd be nice to see Islam try to test his stand-up a little bit. Like, one thing I'll say about Islam, as incredible as he is, he's not invincible. That first Volk fight is proof that this man is not invincible. By that 5th round, he got dropped. He was the one on his back. And yeah, granted, there were only 5 rounds, but just saying, it looked like he was on his way out in that fight, at the end of the fight, I mean. So I'm not writing off the possibility. It's just, the guy's -700 for a reason, but I can a young man can hope and pray, right, to see a beautiful moment and to see Dustin, put that belt, around his wife's waist, who, has been there for him since the jump, and to, right off into the sunset. And usually when Dustin wins fights, it's by devastating, brutal knockout. So I'd love to see that happen again. Nothing against Islam. It's just more so to want to see one of my all-time favorite fighters go out with a belt. So it'd be great to see it. Am I predicting it to happen? Look, the only times I've ever picked against Dustin was the first Conor fight. I'm not talking about, when I say first, I mean 2014 for some of y'all noobs. I don't mean when he fought him and knocked him out on Fight Island. And I picked Khabib against Dustin. Those are like the only times I pick against Dustin. Unfortunately, as a pure pick, I have to pick Islam here, but betting wise, I think it's dog or pass at odds like this. So official pick is Ann Still, but geez, I'm hoping for Ann New. Like, MMA gods, if you're listening, man, let this man have his moment. Let him have his shining, accomplishment throughout over his career. Even though I think he's a Hall of Famer, even if he doesn't win this belt, I think he's a Hall of Famer. Look at the wars, look at the knockouts, look at the records, look at the guy. Like, yeah. So I just hope even if Dustin can't get it done, I hope he has some moments in this fight. I hope he maybe rocks Islam once, goes for a near guillotine attempt, like something. Like, I don't want to see him get done dirty here, but Islam is known for doing people dirty. So let's see. Should be exciting. Co-main event of the evening. By the way, this co-main event fight is 5 rounds for those that don't know. We got Sean Strickland, he's 28-6, taking on Paulo Costa, who's 14-3. Currently, they got it. Sean Strickland minus 230. The comeback on Paulo Costa is plus 190. So I actually bet on Paulo Costa's last fight against Whitaker. I thought that was a great spot. And I think I bet him, plus 220. And I thought he covered that price tag. I thought he fought very admirably. I felt like, he rocked Whitaker multiple times. The reason I wanted to take him there is because I thought the odds were off. And I thought that, Whitaker is an incredible fighter, but, he got dropped by a jab his fight prior. And I thought we were getting to that point where Paulo could potentially capitalize. And Paulo did rock him with that spinning hook kick. It's just, as the fight progressed, the output started to badly wane on the Paulo Costa side, and Whitaker was able to just accumulate and kind of outpoint him. Here against Strickland, like here's what I want to say about Paulo. He can compete at this level. Like, that's understood. He can compete at this level. It's just, can he win at this level? That's the big question, right? With Strickland, we know how good he is. We know what he does. He has insane output, and multiple times where he's put up great numbers. And Paulo's put up some good numbers too, against Marvin Vettori. He set the record for second most significant strikes landed in a light heavyweight fight. Shout out to my boy Jamal Hill, who holds the record for number 1 in that category. But Paulo Costa and Marvin Vettori, they put on a war. So Paulo's going to have to come out with that kind of output against a guy like Strickland. Because usually with Strickland, there have been guys that have caught him early. Alex Poatan with that disgusting left hook. Zaleski, who's also on this card with a spinning hook kick. So it can be done. But usually when you're not knocking out a guy like Strickland, he is very content to jab you, Philly shell, circle, occasional leg kicks. Once he starts to feel you slow down, that's when he picks up the volume. So I see it just being an honest, competitive 5-round fight where these two are getting after it, and Strickland just probably has a bit more output and edges the decision. But, I could see either guy get knocked out, of course. Do I see either guy humping either one's legs? Probably not. They're going to do the man dance, and I'm going to lean with Strickland in that fight. Featured bout in the middleweight division, we got Kevin Holland. He's 25-11, taking on Michal Lord Olekiejczuk, who's 19-7. Currently, they got it. Kevin Holland minus 270. The comeback on Michal is plus 230. This is interesting because this is one of those fights where a lot of people are very, very confident in Holland, which people tend to be overly confident in Holland for whatever reason throughout his career. And I think Holland is very talented. I think he brings a lot to the table as far as techniques and physical attributes. But my issue with Holland is, he's actually a really smart guy if you hear him talk. But and I'm not talking about when he talks in the cage. I'm talking about when he talks outside the cage. He's a smart guy. It's just in the cage, he likes to fuck around a lot, and he also is very reliant on his physical tools and natural gifts to get him past situations. I've told you guys the story many times. Like, when I laid a similar price like this on Kevin Holland against Darren Stewart, who, is losing to 40-year-olds in Cage Warriors, my friends had a check for pulse. That's how much of a sweat that shit was. So here against Michal, Michal is a former 205er. We're talking about, okay, if these two bang it out, Michal's banged 3 straight rounds with Khalil Roundtree and won. Michal's banged 3 straight rounds with Dustin Jacoby, a former Glory striker. And these are 205ers. 205ers. And he did good against both of them, win or lose. So I don't see why he can't bang with a guy like Holland either. And even that Njokuani fight, the Chitty fight, who's got a similar body type to Kevin Holland. Michal took some big ones, and Michal, people talk about his durability. His chin's fine. Like I said, I saw him go 3 with Khalil. I saw him go 3 with Dustin Jacoby. His chin's fine. He might get rocked, but his chin's fine. It's the body. He's a little soft around the midsection. That's where you kind of saw Michel Pereira hurt him there and Chitty earlier in their fight, but he was able to recover, not in the Michel fight, but in the Chitty fight. And let me say something about Michal. Michal Pereira at 185. Have you seen what this guy's been doing? It's not just Michal. He got out of there in a minute. He's got the other two guys out of there in a minute too. And what do y'all think would happen if Michal Pereira fought Kevin Holland? Y'all know he'd whoop his ass too. And then the other loss at middleweight against Kyob Ohio. Like, what do y'all think Kyob Ohio would do to Kevin Holland? He'd choke him out. So to me, I'm not holding those losses against Michal. I'm not holding against the Jack Della or the MVP losses against Holland. Even though I bet both of them there, I dog odds no less. Like, I like fading Holland these days because you can't rely on him to fight optimally. He fucks around a lot. He likes to talk, which as a fan, I love shit talk. I love, the theatrics and being flamboyant and the whole bit, the swag. I love that stuff. But as a betting man, I want someone who is going to get down and get to the grind. And by the grind, I don't necessarily mean wrestling. I mean just getting, just going for it, charging, marauder. And that's what Michal Olekiejczuk is. And I think Michal Olekiejczuk is going to walk down Kevin Holland and bomb off on him. And whether he gets caught along the way, I mean, the line says it's minus 270 Holland. So people just think it's a foregone conclusion. Just going to come out here, knock him out, drop him and sub him. What I'm worried about is Kevin Holland getting around the neck of Michal. I think that's a pretty fair concern. I mean, that's when Michal loses fights. That's usually how it goes. People tend to choke him out. Holland is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, of course, but we're talking about a plus 230 dog here, could be plus 250 on fight night. So, it's not like I'm laying chalk and my guy's got a big weakness in one big area. It's pretty much, to me, it's like if he can avoid getting his neck touched, I think he's going to put it on Kevin Holland. I think he's going to break Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland doesn't like when people get in his face, they back him up, and they start teeing off on him. And I think that's something Michal can do. But yeah, of course, I'm worried about certain things. There's rumors about Michal training in a shed, and I don't know the truth behind that. I've seen the comments on his Instagram, people telling him hey man, go to a big camp like ATT, and Michal's like, I'm happy where I am. And you got to understand, with some fighters, they do better at the bigger gyms, and other fighters, they need their camp to be revolved around them. I mean, Kevin Holland's not at a big gym either. So, and I'm not exactly sure how serious Kevin Holland's taking things, because I thought he dropped to 170 because his plan was to be a contender. Now I think he's given up on that. He's going back up to 85. He was tweeting the other day about, I get to eat tacos a week before the fight. So it's not like this man is on some nutrition plan, trying to make a title run either. So I just can't lay a price like that on a guy like Holland, who fucks around too much, even against much lower competition. How many times I got to bring up the Darren Stewart example? And I know there's other ones too, but there's worrisome things the fight he had against Fluffy, where he's able to really badly hurt him to the body. We know Michal can be hurt to the body. So obviously there's concerns, but I really think Michal has a path to victory here with that pressure and with not letting this guy breathe, going upstairs, going to the body as well. Michal does have some nice body shots too, and kind of break him like he broke Chitty. So I'm going to go on a limb here and actually take the underdog. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Jailton Almeida. He's 20-3, taking on Alexander Romanov, who's 17-2. Currently, they got it. Jailton minus 250. The comeback on Romanov is plus 210. This is kind of interesting because both are grapplers, and there's a big difference in how much they weigh. Romanov's 265, cuts to 265. Jailton, former 205er, probably weighs in 230, 240 for the heavyweight fights. Both guys kind of hit or miss, and both guys have pulled stunts before. The stunt that Romanov pulled against Volkov has to go down as one of the all-time stunts in the history of the sport. That was something that I can't even put my finger on. I don't even know how to properly describe it, but the guy landed 0 strikes. The man threw 1 strike. He attempted 5 takedowns, and when that didn't work, it was time to go home. But then I've seen other performances, against Marcin Tybura, although in a loss, he fought competitively with a top 10 guy. The Bulgoy fight, there might have been some weird situations, but doubled him up on strikes, landed takedowns there, got his 30-27. So, and from a market perspective, let's pull up all the past odds of Romanov fights just to put in perspective here, what we're dealing with. So Okay, minus 140 against Blagoy. This man was minus 140 against Alexander Volkov, like a legit guy. He was minus 300 against Tybura, minus 1650 against Chase Sherman, minus 500 against Jared Vandera, minus 140 against Espino, minus 470 against Marcos Rogerio de Lima Pesao, minus 450 against Roki. And basically the point I'm trying to make is this is the first time you're getting him at dog odds. So that's like might be considered a massive market overcorrection. And with Jailton, you know, he's kind of a one-dimensional guy too, except it's more in the jiu-jitsu realm. And I'm thinking like with a guy like Romanov, who's so much bigger than Jailton, is Jailton going to be able to get that body triangle around him? And also, if things don't go Jailton's way, he'll start flopping to his back and he gets hit one time. Like what he did against Blades, like credit. Blades is like, you know, a legit top 5 guy about to fight for an interim title. So all respect, but I mean, that was a stunt and a red flag. So both guys have a lot of yeah, this is what I'm not sure. And usually when I'm not sure, I go with the underdog. And like, I just don't know what's going to happen. Like, is Jailton really just going to come out here and dominate him? He might. I mean, like I said, if you saw that Volkov fight, that's possible. But then there's like Gianni always says, you can't judge someone on their worst performance and you can't judge them on their best performance. So what do these two look like if they're both at their best? It's tough because both are such high-level grapplers, just in different ways. One's a what kind of wrestler is Romanov? Is it Greco? I don't even remember. Sorry. And then with Jailton, obviously you know about his jiu-jitsu. So this is tough. This is tough. Jailton has beaten Russians before, although my boy over here, I'm pretty sure is Moldovan. But I'm gonna go Romanov on a limb. I'm on a limb. I'm gonna go Romanov. Let's see what happens. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Randy Rude Boy Brownies, 18-5, taking on Elizeu, Zaleski, Capoeira, Dos Santos, who's 24-7-1. Currently, they got it. Randy Brown minus 170. The comeback on Elizeu is plus 140. So I actually took Randy Brown here, minus 160. And initially, I wasn't going to bet this fight, but when I watched the tape, I got pretty convinced. And the reason why is because, firstly, shout out to both these guys who I'm a big fan of. Have had a lot of success betting both these guys over the years, whether it was the 7-unit bet on Randy Brown against Mickey Gall, or whether it was betting Elizeu against Curtis Melender at like minus 105 odds. One takedown, the fight was over shortly after. So I just have a tremendous amount of respect for both guys. And Elizeu, you know about his capoeira kicks, knocked out Sean Strickland with a spinning head kick. This is a guy who knows what it means to have a 7-fight win streak in the UFC. And usually when he loses, aside from the Li Jingliang fight, it's like close split decisions that could have gone either way, man. Like the Salikov fight, like the Dalby fight. So, man, Elizeu is such a respectable warrior. And then with Brown, you know, he's so long for the weight class, and he's kind of been hit or miss too. He's had some performances where he's looked incredible, and he's had other performances where you're kind of scratching your head a bit. But I really liked what I saw against Salikov. Like, yeah, the knockout was beautiful, but I like the footwork. I like the confidence. So speaking of confidence, because here's one thing that's kind of plagued Randy Brown in the past is that sometimes he's a bit overconfident. Sometimes he plays around too much. Sometimes he gets a little cocky. He's feeling himself. And, you know, you'll be shouting at your TV like, Randy, stop fucking around. Like, even when he fought my boy Jared Gooden, I thought he was fucking around too much. The Wellington Turman fight, I felt was a little bit too close for comfort. But then there's these other performances where you're like, okay, Randy, like that's what I've been expecting to see from you. The Barberena fight, the Muslim Salikov fight. And I think that he's catching Elizeu Zaleski at the perfect time. Look, Zaleski's such a respectable warrior, a guy who's going to go out on his shield, a guy who's going to give it his all. I love this guy, but Zaleski had like a drug suspension. I know there's no USADA now, but granted, my boy Zaleski's, you know, pushing 38 now. I don't think he's looked the same his last two fights since he came back from the suspension. In both the Abubakar and the Renat fight, he almost got knocked out in like the first minute of both those fights. But like, you know that Renat and Abubakar, they're not known for boxing anywhere near on the level, you know, for MMA as Randy Brown. They're grinders, they're wrestlers, and even they were like almost knocking him out. What's going to happen when a guy who rocks Zaleski isn't about to just shoot for a takedown because he doesn't truly know how to strike besides winging overhands? Like, Randy Brown's going to set up that one. Once he finds his distance on his jab, whether it's going to be a 1-3-2, whether it's going to be a 1-1-2, he's going to find an opening for that straight right. And I think he might actually get his second first round knockout in a row here. Because one thing I've noticed about Zaleski's last few fights, and again, with all due respect to a guy who I hold in such high regard, when he's swinging his bombs, they're from so far away. I think he's going to have a hard time touching Randy. And from there, I think he's going to try to shoot some takedowns on Randy. I think those are going to get stuffed. And then he's going to be forced to stand up with Randy. And that's where I think Randy's going to pick him apart, whether we go to a decision or pick him apart and get a knockout. I don't think Randy's going to choke out Zaleski, but I think he can knock him out or win a decision here. And for that reason, I laid it straight at -160 to win 2 units. So let's get it. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Roman Kopylov. He's 12-3, taking on Cesar Almeida, who's 5-0. Currently, they got it. Cesar, holy shit, the line flipped. Cesar -125. The comeback on Roman Kopylov is +105. So, yeah, a lot of people jumped in on that dog money on Cesar. And I understand it. Cesar, people like to talk about his kickboxing background and how he had, the trilogy with Alex, and all 3 of those fights went to decision. He even won one of them. But people need to put emphasis on how legit of a kickboxer Cesar is. This is not just because people are going to be like, oh, well, Roman already fought a glory kickboxer in Carl Roberson. Like guys like Jonah Hill cut like Roberson's level and Cesar Almeida's level are night and day. Like Cesar Almeida was once ranked #1 in the world in glory. You know what I'm saying? And he's fought the Donovan Wise or whatever the hell the dude's name is. And that second fight they had, man, maybe I just don't fully understand the glory scoring system, but just as a fight, I was like, are you sure Cesar didn't win this fight? And he's had some really good ones, man. So Cesar's legit as hell. It's just, kickboxing is a completely different sport, man. I mean, they got fucking 10-ounce gloves, 14-ounce gloves, something like that. It's in a ring. They separate them when they clinch, I don't even think there were elbows there. It's not Muay Thai. So, but let me say this about Cesar. Cesar was doing some stuff in those kickboxing matches that I think would work well in MMA. He was doing boot sweeps. He'd get on top of the guys to where the ref was like, all right, no more. You can't be doing that anymore. He'd clown guys in there. So Cesar, and when he starts to pick up the tempo, he really goes off. So I'm a big fan of his kickboxing, and his, takedown defense has gone a lot better working in Vegas. And then with Kopylov, he's a guy who came into the UFC and we were thinking yeah, okay, this ain't going to pan out. But dude, then he went on that big run and just knocking everybody out. So now he's starting to feel comfortable in the octagon. So this is such a great fight. Striker versus striker. Yeah, the more well-rounded guy is Roman, but he doesn't really shoot much. But then, you'd say on paper, well, it's 2 strikers and Cesar's the better striker. Therefore, foregone conclusion, Cesar's going to win. You just can't look at it like that, okay? What happened when Khalil Roundtree fought Gokhan Saki? Yeah, Gokhan Saki, 2 strikers. Gokhan Saki's the way better striker. Khalil knocks him out in the first 2 minutes. Guys, kickboxing for glory and kickboxing in MMA are 2 different things. And yeah, I know someone's going to bring up Pereira, who's the biggest anomaly of them all. Someone who's really able to make the transition. And I'm not saying Cesar can't make the transition, and I'm not saying Cesar's not going to win this fight. And I'm also not worried about Cesar being 36. I think he's a young 36. Despite his kickboxing experience, he didn't really take too much damage, and he looks fresh to me. And also, hasn't plateaued because he's still learning about the takedown defense and the get-up game and the jiu-jitsu and all that. So I think Cesar is legit, but I think Roman can fight too. So this is I think a pick'em's accurate. I get the confidence on Cesar for sure with his credentials, but I think that, to hold it against Roman that he got choked out by Fluffy, we should view Roman as the same Roman that was on that 4-fight win streak. Don't look down on him because one of the most relentless grinders in the fucking sport choked him out. I mean, what do you think would happen if Fluffy fought Cesar, right? So it's a really tough one for me. So that's why we're going to flip a coin. So heads, who's got the bigger head? Let's say Cesar's got the bigger head. We'll go tails for Roman because he just got his tail whooped last fight. All right, let's see. Heads. All right. We're going to go with the glory kickboxer here. So again, I can make a case for both guys. I think they're both really damn good, and I think that this fight's gonna let us know a lot because Cesar, just making that transition from Glory Kickboxing to the UFC. A couple guys have made that transition well, and there's not much of a takedown threat here, but it would be interesting to see Kopylov maybe mix things up a bit. But Kopilov's nasty, man. Head kicks, body shots. Like these two are going to probably stand and bang until one man falls or have a nice little 3-round war. So should be exciting. I don't have a pick, but since I flipped the coin and it landed on Almeida, for your records, you can say I'm picking Almeida, but like, dude, this fight could, like, on paper before the fact, I think that pick'em is accurate. Now, after the fact, it might not look like a pick'em, but going into it beforehand, if I'm the odds maker, I'm making y'all pay chalk on both sides, and that's just the bottom line. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Grant Dawson, he's 20-2, taking on Joe Solecki, who's 13-4. Currently, they got it. Grant Dawson, oh my God, minus 510. The comeback on the comeback on Joe Solecki's plus 385. Y'all know I'm not a big Grant Dawson fan. I mean, I don't know him as a person. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like I don't think that, I want to be very careful how I say this. I don't think he's really much of a like fighter per se. I just think he's a very dominant grappler. Like I don't think that, he's the kind of guy that's going to be digging deep in fights. Look at the Ricky Glenn fight. I don't think he's the kind of guy that can really take a good shot. Look at the Bobby Green fight. Look at the fight against the Preacher. What's my boy, the Preacher name? Hugh Pulley. Like, shout out to my boy Robert Hale, who beat him. So yeah, it's interesting. And then Joe Solecki's he's a very good black belt himself. My issue with Solecki is from time to time he will go to his back and play around and guard, but Grant Dawson's done similar shit too, man. And like, if there's one guy here I actually think has the striking edge, it's Solecki. It's just, do I trust Solecki enough to really like do some damage? Because one thing about guys like this is they're not that confident in their striking abilities. They're more confident in, their black belts in jiu-jitsu and their grounding ability. So for Grant to be minus 500, like, doesn't that mean he should just come out here and get a first round sub or a first round TKO? And like, to sub Joe Solecki in the first round, my man, like that would be a real feat. I don't see Grant Dawson subbing this guy in the first round. Like, I'd be very surprised. As far as TKO, both guys are chinny. I mean, it's not just Grant who's been knocked out more than once. Joe Solecki has too. Like, I'm not even talking about that slam. Go pull up his fight against Nick Mata. You want to see a brutal KO? A brutal KO? Pull up Nick Mata versus Joe Solecki. So this one's tough because, again, I'm not a Grant Dawson believer like some of these other guys at all. Like, I think, sure, in pure grappling, yeah, Grant Dawson's good, but like when you're ranked number 15 in the world and like you can't even throw a jab, come on, dog, like that. And he was talking about how like Islam Makhachev, I am your replacement. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all died laughing when we heard that shit, dude. Like stop, dog. Like, people give him way too much credit for that Demir Ismagulov fight. Like, y'all know Demir retired because he had some health issues. That wasn't the same Demir that was doing things early in his UFC career. That was the completely unhealthy washed Demir. So, and then Solecki, I don't know if I've seen much improvement there either, man. So yeah, like I just can't do no minus 500. I think it's a dog or pass situation. I guess I'll lean Dawson because, Solecki is content sometimes pulling guard, like in that Jared Gordon fight early on. And the Jim Miller fight, I mean, early on, but we know Jim Miller tends to gas late in fights, but so does Dawson. So, I mean, are y'all confident in Dawson here? Let me know, man. I guess I'll pick Dawson because, like when I want to fade Dawson, I want a guy who like is a better striker, and Solecki actually is a better striker, but like Solecki's not that confident in his striking, like I said. And I want a guy who's not going to give up easy takedowns and go to his back. So, what are the odds on Dawson by decision? Curious about that. Let's see. Dawson by decision, minus 110. Okay, so yeah, okay. All right, never mind. All right, yeah. So we'll just take Dawson as a pure pick and move on. Dog or pass though. Next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Philly Fresh, Phil Rowe, he's 10-4, taking on Jake Matthews, who's 19-7. Currently, they got it. Jake Matthews -160. The comeback on Phil Rowe is +140. So this is an interesting fight. You know, Jake Matthews has been fighting in the UFC a long time, since he was a kid, since he was like 19 years old. I've been watching this guy. And, you know, y'all might call him Jake Matthews. I call him Flake Matthews because, look, the guy is talented. He's got one-punch knockout power. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's as experienced as they get. Like, there's a lot to like about Jake Matthews, but the thing with Jake is it's the mental, man. The mental hasn't caught up with the physical yet. And don't get me wrong, he has gotten better. He is more seasoned than he used to be, but he flakes out in fights, especially ones that he should win, man. And it's like people saw the Andre Fialho fight, which shout out to Fialho because he's a true warrior. But, you know, my boy Fialho is like lost 5 or 6 of his last fights, all by knockout, right? So like people were like, oh, Jake Matthews 2.0, and like, stop. And then Matthew Semmelsberger fights him, drops him every single round. Jake was a big favorite there. Then he fights Darius Flowers. Like, no disrespect to Darius on the regional scene. I'm sure he's doing his thing. But at the UFC level, come on, son. And then he fought top prospect Michael Morales, which, you know, he fought tough with him, but clearly lost. Like, the issue with Matthews is like the body language. He's missing something in terms of like he's not assertive. He doesn't really have that. He doesn't have that dog in them. He's just a physical guy with skills, but he's not the toughest guy. And here's the thing about Phil Rowe. So I made a comment about how Phil Rowe, the first round of every fight, he doesn't look the best. And it takes him a sec to rev up the engine and get him warmed up. That fight against Niko Price, on all 3 scorecards, he won the first and second round on all 3 cards, and he knocked him out in the third round. Now, granted, I know he also got hurt in the third round against Niko, who is a very potent knockout artist. Y'all know how many people Niko's knocked out, but Phil was able to get back up and then knock him out. And then the Magny fight, y'all know the deal with that. That was one of those split decisions that could have gone either way, but like Magny is a gatekeeper to the top 15. That's just established. So at that point in time, Phil could have won the split and gone to the top 15. Instead, he lost the split, but it showed he's right there and he's improving. But, you know, he wasn't one of those guys that blows Magny out the water. He just kind of competed with him. Whereas you see a guy like Mike Malott, who did great early, but Mike Malott got finished by Magny. And Magny's got the most wins in the history of this division. So basically what I'm trying to say is, like, now you give Phil Rowe a year off to really, you know, work on the holes in his game, to fix things up. And he's got a lot of physical tools. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He's got close to, it says his reach is a certain amount, but I heard a story like when he was getting measured, he didn't really get his arms out all the way. So he's actually got a longer reach than people think. And when he hits guys with that straight right, seems like their life flashes before their eyes. And yeah, there are things to be concerned about. You know, he's this tall guy, so he's got tall man defense. He's a tall guy, so his legs are skinny. Takedown defense, you know, he's a very confident in his jiu-jitsu. There's a guy who grappled Gordon Ryan and one of the other badass grapplers, you know, in pure grappling. So he's a black belt under Julian Williams, who Julian Williams is a bad motherfucker. If you know about my boy Julian Williams, you know that's a legit black belt to get one under him. And I think that Phil Rowe, I like him as an underdog here. You know, I think that it could be close at times, but I think that somewhere in the fight, you know, look, obviously Jake Matthews can possibly hit him with something big. Jake Matthews can do some veteran tactics here. I understand that he's the favorite, but I think that Phil Rowe is going to establish his jab, keep him at the end of that long ass reach, and hit him with that right hand that makes everybody see God, and maybe hit a flying knee in there, kind of like that James Vick fight the last time, or one of the last times that Jake Matthews fought like a 6'3" opponent. You know, make him take a sloppy shot and lock in one of those long man chokes. So I can see a submission, a knockout, or a decision from Rowe. But I'm not going to lie and act like Jake Matthews doesn't have paths either. Of course he does, but I'm counting on Flake to Flake here. Jake to Flake, you know what I'm saying? So hopefully he does his typical Flake Matthews here, and I can come out here and cash an underdog bet. I haven't played it yet, but I'm looking to lay 2 units on Phil Rowe. And yeah, you know, when you give me dog odds to fade Jake Matthews, unless we're talking about fucking like Darius Flowers, again, no disrespect, but at the UFC level, that guy don't belong. But against like a guy who does belong at the UFC level, let's see what's up. Especially a young, hungry guy like Phil. And when I say young, hungry, Jake's the younger guy. That's what's crazy about it. Like people will talk about how like, oh, Jake is like only 29 or 30. He's just entering his prime. You got to be very, very clear when you say that, what you mean by that. Yeah, the number is young, but he's an old 29. He's an old 30. It's like saying Kelvin Gastelum. How old's Kelvin now? Probably the same, between 29 and 31, maybe 32 at most. Like, but he's an old 29 to 32. He's not a young. So these guys like that start their careers very young. Like they got a lot of accumulated damage there. They got a lot of wear and tear. And I just think that's the case with Jake Matthews, Kelvin Gastelum, guys like that who, oh, he's so young. Now he's entering his prime. It's like, nah, dog. A guy like that, his prime was a couple of years ago. Guys that get into the sport later, their primes, you know, you guys understand what I'm saying here. So, no, I don't think that we're about to see Jake Matthews 3.0 this time or any shit. It's going to be the same Flake Matthews throughout his career. So I'm going to go Phil Rowe here to come out here and set back Jake Matthews and hopefully get a nice little top 20 showdown with another upcoming prospect. So I'm going to go Phil Rowe for the upset. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a rematch between Niko Price, he's 15-7, taking on Alex Morono, who's 24-9. Currently, they got it. Alex Morono minus 230. The comeback on Niko Price is plus 195. So, first time they fought was a hell of a fight. Like, first round, Morono drops Price. Second round, Price comes back and starts putting it on Morono and then eventually knocks him out cold at the end of the second round. Got overturned because Niko Price was smoking the devil's lettuce. You know, how dare you, right? Like, that's definitely why he knocked out Morono, right? It's not because he landed a clean shot to the chin. It's because he was smoking on a little reefer beforehand. That's why, right? But so I'm going in this fight thinking, oh, Niko's washed, and yeah, Morono's catching him at a good time, and that might still be the case. But like, wasn't I saying the exact same shit about Morono and Court McGee like a few months ago when I bet a big price on Morono against Court McGee? Court McGee, who was coming off 2 devastating knockout losses to Jeremiah Wells and Matt Brown. Similar to Morono's opponent here, Niko, who's coming off devastating knockouts to Phil Rowe and Robbie Lawler. And Alex Morono did not treat Court McGee like a guy who's at the end of his career was coming off devastating knockout losses. He even lost a round in that fight and made me sweat my ass off. So remembering that and then going and watching tape, guys, hear me out. I actually think it's a dogger pass situation. Like, I going into it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna probably bet Morono here. Price is washed, but it's not exactly like Alex Morono's Mr. Spring Chicken, and not even the Court McGee fight. What about that Pons fight? Like, he's doing his thing against Pons early on, kind of like he was doing against Niko Price early on. What happened late in that fight? Pons knocked him out, just like Niko Price did to him. So I don't know, man. This is a dogger pass situation, guys. Like, am I even confident in picking Morono here? No, I'm not. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go Niko Price here to beat him a second time. Next up, also in the welterweight division, we got Mickey Gall, 7-5, taking on Bassil Hafez, who's 8-4-1. Currently, they got it. Bassil minus 350. The comeback on Gall's plus 285. So these guys competed in a grappling match like 10, 11 years ago. Bassil Hafez won. The thing about Mickey is he came into the UFC. You guys know, CM Punk, Mike Jackson, come on, guys. And then he had to face reality. Like, one of my biggest bets of all time, I already mentioned it, was betting 7 units on Randy Brown against Mickey Gall. And I bet on Diego Sanchez like plus 220 against Mickey Gall. But then I started being like, well, you know what? Mickey Gall's paid his dues. He's fought, some really tough guys. Now he's ready to start winning some fights. So I bet on Mickey Gall against like Mike Malott, who turned out to be a fraud. And I bet him in another spot too at big dog odds. And Mickey might be slightly improving, like just a little more experience, but he's not improving enough to the point where like he's going to stick around. Like, he just don't got it. He's not athletic enough. He's got decent jiu-jitsu. Like, people act like he's an elite back taker. Guys, when I talk about elite back takers, I talk about Damian Maia, not Mickey Gall. Okay, so let's relax. He's not elite at anything. Is his best asset is back taking? Sure. But to say it's elite, Damian Maia is elite. Okay. So Mickey is just a 6'2" nothing. And then Bassil, it's easy to overreact to a performance and a loss and then want to lay big chalk the next time. I did that mistake when Rolando Bedoya fought Chaos Williams, fought fucking great, then goes to like China or Singapore and fights Keenan Song and loses. I was like, oh my God, bro. So you don't want to make that mistake just because Bassil had a great fight with Jack Della, which y'all saying that Bassil won that fight, like, stop. Look, did Bassil perform admirably? Hell yeah. Tip your cap to him. You showed you belong. You showed you're a beast. You're a physical presence. And you put on a hell of a fight with Jack. But there was only one guy who was close to getting finished in that fight. And it wasn't Jack. So let's not exaggerate or make up scenarios that just simply aren't true. But that being said, I do think that Bassil is going to be the more physical, the more hungry guy here. And I think when he wants to take down Mickey Gall, he will. Striking, I'm still not quite sure about Bassil striking it. I still need to see a little bit more. But I think that just the physicality here, I've seen way smaller men have a lot of success against a guy like Mickey Gall. Don't give up your back. And if you do, I mean, it's not like we're not dealing with a black belt here in Bassil either. I think you can scramble out of it. So not sure if it's going to be a finish or a decision, but yeah, I don't think I'll ever pick Mickey Gall to win a UFC fight ever again. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a match between Joselyne Edwards. She's 13-5, taking on Ailin Perez, who's 9-2. Currently, they got it. Ailin Perez -185. The comeback on Joselyne Edwards is +160. It's an interesting fight because Joselyne, I think, has been making improvements. Like, you see that last fight she had against Nora, and we're thinking, like, okay, you keep this fight standing. Just like in any fight, you keep it standing. Joselyne can kickbox. And it was Joselyne going out there, landing 5 takedowns. Like, okay, so you've been addressing this part of your game. But, man, she kept getting reversed. And it's like, oh, there's nothing more frustrating than when you bet on a fighter, they get on top of their opponent, and you're like, yes. Just ride it out for the rest of the round. Let's not get stood up. Let's not do anything stupid. We got this round secured. Yeah. So she gets on top of her and then she gets reversed. And it's like, oh my God, bro. Like, that's the kind of shit where you want to throw your TV into your pool. I just can't stand that stuff. And then with Ailin Perez, she's as one-dimensional as they get. Don't let the twerking fool you. But also don't let the female Habib BS fool you either. But she is relentless with her takedown attempts. Granted, the people she's fought, Ashley Evans Smith, So it's about on the feet. Joselyne's gonna light this young lady up. But like, I'm gonna be really pissed off when I take a dog shot on Joselyne. She's lighting up for 3 minutes, then she gets a kick caught. Not even a takedown, a kick caught. Or slips or something, and then she's on her back the rest of the round. She loses that round. I'm like, oh my God, man. Like, that kind of shit just pisses me off. But man, if Joselyne can sprawl and brawl here, I mean, she is a live dog if she can do that. I'm just not convinced she does. Like, how many chances am I going to give this girl? And I say that I don't think I've even ever bet on her once. Maybe once. I don't know. I've been doing this a long time, but it is dogger pass at these odds. You can't be laying -185 or whatever on someone with only one path to victory. Like, Ailin ain't gonna win no stand-up fight. I'll tell you that right now. And that latter part of that Pudilova fight, shit got sketchy. And Joselyne is making improvements. So this is a dogger pass situation at the betting window, but I don't know. I'm gonna reluctantly say Ailin is able to capitalize on Joselyne throwing kicks and falling or doing something stupid and just staying on her back. And you're like, oh my God, Joselyne, you just lit her up with a 10-piece and now you're on your back for the next 3 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not trying to deal with that bullshit, but it is a dogger pass situation from a market perspective. You can't debate that. Now, last but not least, in the flyweight division, we got Andre Mascochi Lima. He's 8-0, taking on Mitch Raposo, who's 9-1. Currently, they got it. Andre Lima minus 240. The comeback on Mitch Raposo is plus 205. So I was thinking about taking Lima here when he was like minus 210. Then I go to bed, wake up, he's minus 250. So yeah, I can't play that. Oh, it's not that I can't play that. It's just that I'm not willing to play that. Or I could just be like one of these guys and tip a line that's been long gone. But if I don't have action on it, like, firstly, I'm not trying to fucking pull that bullshit. But secondly, if I don't have action on it, like, why even do some bullshit like that, bro? But the point I'm trying to make here is that, when you miss the line, there's no reason to force a bet. But I like this kid, Andre Lima, a lot. He's got like real striking, not striking for MMA. I mean, like, he can strike for real, for real. He's got a lot of swagger. He effortlessly switches his stance. He goes out there. He's got a presence about him. He digs to the body, nasty leg kicks. His takedown defense is getting a lot better. He's super athletic. He's physical for the weight class. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, by the way, as well. And his scrambles on the mat are sick. And I hear this whole narrative about how, like, oh, but Igor Severino was taking over that fight. Like, what? Based off what? Like, every time that Andre would get taken down, he'd pop right back up. And then in that second round, when he got taken down, this time, he didn't get taken out for 2 seconds. This time he got taken down for like 10 or 15 seconds. So now we're going to act like, the fight was just going to sway in Severino's way. Andre gets back up, and when they're along the fence, Buddy bites him. So how does that make you conclude that Severino was taking over that fight? Don't get me wrong. I think Severino, I hope they give him a second chance because I think he's a hell of a fighter. But, like, based off what was Severino taking over that fight? One exchange? Like, I think people need to relax with that fucking narrative. I think that narrative's like, smart people are saying it. I just disagree with them. You're allowed to disagree. I'm from the U.S. Freedom of opinion. Let's keep it that way, right? Now, as far as Mitch Raposo, I do have some things to say about him. You see my boy Cody texting me back because Cody actually trained with Mitch Raposo when he was at the New England Cartel for a little bit. So I've scouted Mitch Raposo for a while now because I saw him on Tough and I saw him on Contender Series. And my thoughts then were like, like, this dude's just simply too small to compete at this level. I think he could drop to 115, no cap. And then, so he has like the Hadley fight and the Ludovic whatever fight. And he goes to his regional scene. And he's been starching guys. He's been looking a lot better. He's been looking fast. He's been looking crisp. But I have to mention the level of competition of guys that he's been fighting on his regionals. Like, guys, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that these guys are like total cans. I mean, like, zero resistance. These guys aren't even in shape. They don't look like fighters. It's like, oh man, like, I want to set up all my prospects with the guys that Mitch Raposo fought on his way to his current UFC call. Like, so basically all I'm trying to say is this is Mitch Raposo's first real fight since the Hadley fight. These guys he's been fighting, those weren't fights. And I'm not saying they were fixed. They were not fixed. They were just like utter mismatches. It's like Mitch Raposo fighting the guy on his week trial in the gym. Like, come on, dog. Like, so yeah, like, okay, from my point of view, purple belt in jiu-jitsu, you get the day one guy who's a white belt who's never done this before, and he asked me to live roll. Okay, yeah, I'm going to be able to do some fancy shit and look amazing against him. Put a UFC fighter up against me, probably not going to be the same thing. Okay, so in Mitch's case, yeah, you put a cab driver in front of him. Oh my God, that right hand by Mitch Raposo. Oh my God, he's devastating. Put him up against a real fighter. Let's see what's up. Because he's only fought 2 real fighters. Shaolin, who went 0-3 in the UFC, and Jake Hadley, who's 2-3 in the UFC. So the only real fighters he's fought have losing records in the UFC. And now against Lima, again, Raposo can crack. He's got a big right hand, and I like his hand fighting. He's got a little swag, not as much swag as Mascochi, but he's got a little something going on. I like him. He's quick. He's a little dude, but now he's going to get met with resistance. Now he's going to be in there with a real fighter. Now he's going to actually get pushed. Now someone's going to stand up to him and let him know that, hey, this is my octagon, young man. And I think that Andre Lima is going to get his first official UFC finish. You know, unless you count the bite of the night as a finish, technically it is. You guys cash your TKO and DQ props, but I think he's getting a real one here. I think that, you know, first round, kind of feel him out a little bit, find your range, find your distance, but eventually just keep marching him down, keep cutting off that cage, keep making it feel small for Raposo, start to make him breathe, start to make him will. And I actually texted my boy Yanni the Greek about some stats regarding guys making their debuts on short notice. I'll tell you exactly what he said. So I texted my boy Yanni. Okay, so debut fighters just debut with like full camp or just debut in general. They have a 45% win rate. Debut fighters with less than 30-day notice have a 33% win rate, and debut fighters with less than 10-day notice, which is what this man has here, have an even lower percentage rate. So the cards aren't really stacked in Mitch Raposo's favor. And let alone, even if you had a full camp, I just think Andre Mascocci's on a different level. People exaggerate so much. Like when people see that Andre Mascocci is like this hype prospect, people are like, oh, I don't think he's going to be a future champ. Oh, I don't think he could beat Davison or Pantoja. It's like, guys, you don't have to beat Davison or Pantoja to go out there and fucking beat Mitch Raposo. Same shit with when we were talking about the Michal Olekiejczuk fight. With Randy. I was talking about how like how Michal Olekiejczuk banged it out with Khalil, banged it out with Dustin. Oh, but Dustin isn't the GOAT striker people make him out to be. So fucking what? He's still a solid ass glory striker whose levels above Kevin Holland. Like that's the point I'm trying to make. People try to exaggerate to levels like, oh, you think that someone's going to beat Mitch Raposo? Therefore, you must think he's going to dethrone Pantoja. I didn't say all that. I just said he's going to beat this can crusher Mitch Raposo. That's it. We'll take it from there. And I think he's a legit prospect too. So I'm going Andre Lima Mascocci here. And I'm still paying attention to the line. I want to get action on it, but I'm not going to force a bet at a line I don't like. Let's talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. The fight to watch is Randy Brown versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, two mainstays of the welterweight division that are just outside the top 15. Zaleski at one point was ranked. These guys want to get back into the top 15. Zaleski with the momentum of that Renat fight where he took an ass whooping up front. Renat emptied the clip, and Zaleski just started those stabbing front kicks, had him gasping for air at the end of that fight. He could have got a TKO. Randy Brown coming off the most impressive performance of his career. He's 6-1 in his last 7. Winner of this fight is moving up to the top 15. So for that reason, and just their exciting fighting styles, Randy Brown versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos Capoeira is my fight to watch. My fighter to watch is Phil Rowe. Listen, man, you've had over a year to think about what went wrong against Neil Magny, who's like, you know, he got caught up in the whole clinching against Magny thing, which I don't know why they do it, but they always do it. But now you got a chance to bounce back against an established UFC vet who is very flaky and is hit or miss. This is a good chance for you to get a nice little name on your resume and move up a little bit. Move up, you know, maybe you get the Mike Malott fight next. So who knows? But either way, Phil Rowe is my fighter to watch because, again, what's his record at this point, Phil Rowe? 10-4. Okay, so he's already, you know, we're reaching the 15 fight mark. But when he came into the UFC, let me see what his record was then. So when this dude came into the UFC, he was only what 7-2. So he had less than 10 pro fights. So this guy's been growing on the job. He's been learning on the job. He's been maturing before our eyes. And if now the experiences he's had fighting a seasoned guy like Niko Price, the guy with the most wins in the history of the division in Magny, now let's see if you're ready for a guy like Flake Matthews. I think he is. And for that reason, Phil Rowe is my fighter to watch. Well, my friends, we did it. Thank you so much. It's going down this Saturday night live in New Jersey. Do me a huge favor. Smash that like button for me. Leave me a comment. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. And if you feel so inclined to share, I appreciate that too. I hope you all enjoy the fights. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod. And I'm always down to chat with anybody that's got my back. So really appreciate y'all. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.